Hey guys, we are talking about the sending church elements. These are the 17 different elements that bring definition and clarity to what does it mean to be a sending church. And I want to talk about identification of potential missionaries. Often when we think about identification, we're just thinking about someone who's experienced a personal call, comes to a church, says, I want to be a missionary, and kind of the process goes from there. And that's valid, right? That's maybe some of our stories, or it's stories of people that you know. But I want us to stop and just to think a little deeper about what does it mean to identify missionaries within your own local church. And I want to give us two categories. One is the reactive and the proactive. The reactive identification of a missionary goes something like this. I'm in the Bible, I'm studying, or I listen to a mission speaker, and I feel the Lord really calling me. And maybe there's someone who brings affirmation into my life and says, I could see that in your life. And I go to my pastor, or I go to a church leader and say, I want to be a missionary, right? I've often had this happen as a leader. I get a knock on the door. It says, hey, Pastor Nathan, I want to tell you a little bit about what God's doing in my life. I want to go be a missionary in India. Okay? That is a reactive identification, meaning we as the church, I'm sitting with this person, I'm listening about their call to India, and then we need to react to it. Okay, how do we come alongside them and help identify with them? Here's what I would say. Identification as a missionary is never a solo event. It always happens in community. It's a community activity. No one's ever called to the field by themselves. So when we talk about reactive, it's hearing about someone's story and then saying, okay, how can we begin journeying with you? Beautiful. But I think often what we neglect is proactive identification. So as church leaders, are we looking at people in our congregation and saying, could they be a cross-cultural missionary? Could they be a church planter here in the States? We might do that with other things, right? We need a small group leader. We need a Sunday school teacher. Or maybe we want a non-staff elder, whatever your polity is. But we don't really think about, Billy or Susie, they're always reaching out to the poor in our community. Or they've gone on multiple trips, and that trip leader always says they thrive in a cross-cultural context. Or maybe they pick up Spanish or Portuguese or wherever the church may go. Our church leaders then saying, wow, we want to identify that and empower them to go. Because when we look into the scriptures in calling, we see calling happening when leaders and mentors and the Spirit of God through the Word of God and through the Spirit speaking, through all of these ways, they speak into a person's call and affirmation. But one of the key ways is the local church speaking in and empowering someone to take their next step on their discipleship journey. So think about assessment in two different ways. Number one, reactive identification. Are there people within your congregation who are articulating a call to go overseas or to plant a church or to engage in local ministry? And then can you rally around them and affirm that call? And maybe you can't. Maybe you rally around them and say, hey, we can't affirm this call because we see these things in your life. Or maybe you can, and you are affirming that reactive call. You're reacting to the call that they're bringing to you. But the proactive identification is you look around your congregation and say, I'm going to go to this person and say, hey, have you ever considered being a cross-cultural missionary? Or have you ever considered going full-time and working with the poor? Or whatever, however the Spirit is leading your church and your church leaders, look at your congregation and consider sending out some of your best. Because that's one of the challenges of the sending church. Sending churches send out their best people. They send them to the far corners of the world to make Jesus known. Identification. We react to the call that people are bringing to us as leaders. Or proactive, we're proactively looking at a person's life and calling them to consider what God would do in them.